I'm Dr. Alice Edwards, and I'm here with Tracy Nwanimi for ADHD Out Loud, talking about ADHD and relationships. So this is going to be a Q&A session, and if anybody joins us live and texts in the Zoom chat, any questions, we'll try and address those as well. But otherwise, we're going to be addressing questions that users in the ADHD Out Loud app, which is free and available in the app stores, both Apple and Android, are able to install and download. So other people have posted questions there. So we're going to be sharing some of those questions. Tracy is going to be reading some of those questions out, and then I'll be providing some feedback and opinion on answering some of those questions.
Parent with a 16-year-old, a close friend just told him he doesn't want to be friends anymore because my son is too dramatic, in quote, and clingy. How can I help him?
Oh, that's tough. Poor parent and poor kid struggling with those emotions for sure. So first of all, people with ADHD often can struggle with emotional lability, which means that they feel emotions extra strongly. So if they're feeling very sad or very happy or very insecure, they can feel it very strongly. And that level of strength of feeling that they feel feels perfectly normal and natural to them. But to somebody who doesn't have that same level of heightened emotions, it may seem like they're overreacting, which can cause problems in relationships, as this youth is experiencing and the parent is noticing in their frustration. So one of the most important things to do, from my perspective, is to help the child understand emotional lability, and that while they might feel emotions at a certain level, it may not match up with what many other people who are what we might call neurotypical, people who don't have ADHD versus neurodiverse, somebody who might have ADHD or another neurological condition might experience. So when somebody who is struggling with feeling that way is interacting with someone who doesn't feel that way, we can't expect them to respond the way we would respond, because our feelings and everything are different. So we have to learn to better understand how to adapt how we respond to understanding how other people respond and how they respond differently, because we can't make them feel emotions at the same level as we do, right? Now, to the second part, in terms of the clingy issues that were also mentioned, another challenge that people with ADHD often struggle with is something called rejection sensitivity dysphoria, which means that they often are extra concerned about being rejected and feelings of rejected, and responding even in advance of actually being rejected to the potential of being rejected. So it can also cause those kinds of negative feedback loops and those kinds of problems. Once again, knowing what you're struggling with is half the problem. So helping the child understand that this is something that, yes, they are really feeling, and that it is perfectly natural for them to feel this way, but that they can't necessarily act out of those fears, because those fears may not be based in reality, and that they do need to learn how to better self-soothe and place their emotions in perspective compared to what is real and natural for the other person or people that they might be dealing with, because this could happen in different relationships. It could happen in the future for this child, for example, in a work relationship, right? A boss, they might feel like they need extra emotional encouragement or support from a boss, but a boss could similarly get frustrated, right, if an employee was too clingy as well. So in all those situations, the first step is understanding that this is something that you as an individual might struggle with contextually with interacting with other people. And then in trying to work through it, to be able to really feel where you're at and understand your feelings and validate your feelings, while then also seeking to think through, but while this is how I'm feeling, this may not be really accurate for the other person, and working through how to better balance that and self-soothe through some of the emotions on the front end, to avoid emotional burnout on the part of the other people that you're trying to develop relationships with. This can be a significant challenge, because people with ADHD, especially when interacting with people who don't have ADHD, can be considered very intense and may want to have, far more in-depth or frequent kind of discussions than people without ADHD may, be interested in or struggle with. So this is something that's likely to be an ongoing challenge in developing relationships that just needs to be worked through and talked through. And this is one thing where, as a parent, being an advocate and on the side of your child, if you come to learn these things and help your child interact with these things, and or get them with a coach or therapist who can help them think through individual instances and help be that encouragement. If enough times of doing that, the goal and the hope would be that eventually your voice and your encouragement in your head would kind of stick in their head and help them be able to self-manage better in the future when they're going through these situations. Another thing that can also help is journaling. So writing down your feelings. Often when you're struggling with ADHD, a lot of emotions and feelings get jumbled up in your head, which can add to a heightened sense of emotion. But the act of trying to write them down can help to significantly clarify your feelings. And when it's written down, then you can also review what you've written and then go back and add extra points to it. Or if they're trying to explain their feelings of the situation to, for example, a counselor or a family member to get feedback after the case, they'll have a better recollection of what happened because they've written it down than just trying to recall what happened from their memory at a later date. So I highly recommend journaling, and I found it to be very helpful for lots of people.
Awesome. Thank you, Dr. Alice. We also have a response from Corey. It says, my name is Corey. I have been in your son's position. I'm not 16, but I'm a 19-year-old boy and I have ADHD and I understand how your son feels. I myself have recently experienced that same situation. It is painful and I don't think anyone deserves that. And your son doesn't have to change for anyone. If people can't accept him for who he is, then they don't deserve to have a friend like him. But as for helping him, the only thing I can say is that is there for them. But I personally wish that I have a friend like your son.
Oh, well, I hope that they're able to connect, and it'd be cool if they actually became friends through the app, wouldn't it?
It would be awesome.
Relationship. I love that. That someone else has also posted that comment, and in some ways, it's true that people, may not deserve the amazing awesomeness, that friendship that her son maybe is trying to be. But at the same time, I want to give people who don't have ADHD grace, because since they don't understand about ADHD and they're often limited in their own perception of emotions, to them, someone who's feeling these ways may seem really weird and off because they don't understand that it's because of ADHD either, right? So that's one of the reasons why we do ADHD Out Loud. It's not just for people who have ADHD, but it's also for people who might want to interact with people with ADHD as friends, as coworkers, as relationship partners, you name it, so that people without ADHD can kind of have a little bit more of an insight into what people with ADHD struggle with, so that they can realize, oh, I didn't realize this was because of their ADHD. I thought they were just crazy, or I thought they were just lazy, or I thought they were just fill in the blank, depending on which topic we're talking about, right? So hopefully understanding that these are things where from somebody who might be trying to be a friend with somebody who has ADHD and might seem a little bit crazy, people can realize, oh, okay, it's not that they're crazy. They just feel and think things a little bit differently. And there are some ways where this is really positive and some ways where this can be negative. For example, on the positive side, one thing that people may not realize about this level of emotional strength is, yes, when they love you, they're going to really love you. They're going to love you a lot. They're going to love you deeply. They're going to love you passionately. They're going to, be thinking about you and wanting to do more and go above and beyond. And that goes true for friendships too, right? When you get them to be your friend, they're going to be a really committed, great, amazing friend too. They're not going to be like a, I don't even know if it's, as a doctor, should I say half-assed, but they're not going to half-ass it, right? So they're going to be really into you, maybe in ways that some other friends aren't, right? So there are definitely some benefits as well as some of the drawbacks. And I think that's true of any relationship, regardless of whether or not somebody's neurodiverse. It's just that maybe knowing some of the positives and the negatives about ADHD will help you better understand how to get along with somebody with ADHD in particular.
Thank you, Dr. Alice. I have a question similarly to that. Will say, it feels like going public with my status will limit my opportunities to find a partner. I also find it hard to be with a partner who has ADHD. What should I do?
Interesting. I've heard both ways. So in this case, this person will, and thank you, Tracy, for only using first names so we can kind of keep everybody anonymous, because all of our ADHD users can be ADHD OutLoud app users, or can be anywhere in the whole world. Unfortunately, we don't really support multiple languages quite yet, but anywhere that they can speak or type English into the app, in the App Store or the Android app, they can, post questions and get feedback from each other, as we saw with Corey a minute ago, and also in our live meetings and things like this. So some people I've talked to, because of how people with ADHD are able to talk and converse and kind of keep going and do things, some people with ADHD actually prefer to be in a relationship with somebody else with ADHD, because they find that people with ADHD are more interesting and stimulating mental conversation partners, because they're able to kind of follow the train of that kind of conversation and keep going. Whereas maybe somebody else without ADHD might be kind of more one-track minded, or might think slower, or be less enthused because they don't have that same level of like emotional volume, right? So I think that is really a personal preference in terms of what you're looking for in a partner, in terms of whether or not you would or would not be attracted to somebody with ADHD if you had ADHD. Now, with having ADHD, there is definitely a lot of stigma and misunderstanding about what ADHD means, or what it means to have ADHD. A lot of people really still imagine ADHD really focused on the hyperactive, crazy child running around the room, kind of situation. They don't necessarily understand that there is also a lot of people who are purely or mostly inattentive, or that there are people who are a combination, and they don't understand how much variety there might be in terms of what those symptoms might look like for somebody and how well they are managed. So I definitely think, it might be appropriate not to be out there mentioning it, first thing, but I think that's true of any, thing that you might deal with, right? I mean, if you were diabetic, would you be announcing that on your dating profile? Why? Right? Does it have anything to do with whether or not they should like you as a person? No, it's just a facet of you, right? So I think if you think about other physical ailments and whether or not you would or wouldn't disclose it if you're trying to date someone on the front end, right? I don't necessarily think I would consider it relevant unless something comes up where you happen to be deliberately trying to build a relationship with somebody who has ADHD, and you're looking for somebody else who had ADHD. So if you were really like into somebody with ADHD and have decided, I totally want to date somebody with ADHD because I like the level of energy, then maybe post on your profile, right? Or try and deliberately seek it out, or disclose it up front. But definitely early in the relationship. So, if you start feeling like it's getting serious and you might want to take it serious, right? Then it would definitely be appropriate to disclose it. Just like, maybe diabetes might not come up on a first date, right? I mean, maybe you would just avoid the dessert or have one or two bites and not mention it, right? Or maybe it would come up at the end of the date, but you wouldn't be necessarily being like, oh, well, don't pick this restaurant because the desserts there are too good and I'm diabetic and I just can't, handle it. Because that's, if you say something like that, no, who's going to want to go on a date with you? You're immediately a downer and you haven't even gone out yet, right? Give them a chance to get to like you first as a friend or as a romantic partner before you go pointing out all your flaws, right? Everyone has flaws. True. ADHD or not, right? Everyone has flaws. So they will come out and they will have some too, whatever, whoever they might be. But initially, when you're trying to get to know someone, give them a chance to have a little bit of the lovey-dovey's so that they have a reason to want to deal with the downside that comes along with it, right? If you show them all the negative baggage first, they may not even realize that there's enough of the good stuff that they want to stick around and put up with it.